Just as the Ghetto Boys were back up in your ass with the resurrection, being a group harder than an erection that showed no affection, I too am back up in your ass with an erection. I have an erection right now. It's not relevant to any of this, to what we're doing, but I just happen to have an erection right now. But I too am back up in and out of your ass with a new painting. It's a new painting day, and look at it go. Oh, look at all the colours. And that is a lot of colours, actually. Typically for an underpainting, I'll use primarily just one colour, usually just the standard dark red, which there is some of. But I wanted to try something with this where I'm underpainting sort of tones and colours that will be in those areas to maybe help sort of set the tone overall for the piece overall. And I mean, you'll see by the end, I think it was a pretty successfully done thing that I done. So that's cool. I painted Jason's mask right away, just one quick layer, just because I wanted that to, being that I'm videoing this, I wanted that to be very clear. Right at the centre of the piece, Jason Vorhees' mask, and then you can see that, and then we get on with the rest of the thing. Lots of purples in this piece. I really put effort into putting different colours and tones into pretty much everything, especially in skin tones and such. I didn't want them to be just sort of plain, bland skin tones, which I am somewhat guilty of doing sometimes with pieces. But I didn't want that, so I started with a purple base and then highlighted up from there with various browns and sort of creamy kind of colours to get the highlights in the skin tones for Jason, and I will do a bit of that for Psylock also. And on the hand I have painted, not the one I'm currently painting, but the one I already painted on the right hand side, which is Jason's left hand, you can see where I'm using this sort of the box method of hand highlighting, where if you see the box as like if you see the hand as like a box, like a cube, then it's got a definitive edge sort of where the knuckles bend, so you highlight one side and leave another in shadow, and it's sort of an easy method of highlighting shit. This hand, completely different colour, which I was a bit I don't know, not worried about doing. I had the idea for doing it, and I was sort of worried that maybe it would look shit and it would look too different and too separate from the rest of the piece. But ultimately, again, with this piece, I was just killing it, and it really does work. It's sort of, because there's a turquoise glow from below, within the entire painting, or below the entire painting. So the hand being that way was. It fits with the piece. I wasn't sure whether to light it from like underneath or sort of within to make the hand almost glow from within. But I did kind of, in my mind, have the light coming from basically the bottom left corner, so you can see it hitting like the tops of the knuckles and then sort of within the hand, casting kind of a glow, which I was pretty happy with that. Some lighting on the leg and then a little bit on the mask, but I didn't want it to be too overpowering, like it might look like a random turquoise blob on the underside of the mask, so I blended it in with some of the browns that I had used for the mask, and that will, right now that will get highlighted on top of. So that's something, trying to blend the highlights in but also make them look separate enough that they are to make it look like it is light coming from two different directions rather than just a bunch of colour smudged together on a surface, which is in essence what it is and what is happening. Some highlights here and there. This whole painting was actually my second try. I had painted about 3/4 of a different version of this that I just, after looking at it, I just was not remotely happy with it. The composition was really different. The colours were really different. I was approaching it in almost a standard way to how I'd normally paint, which is why this one might look and certainly does feel very different in terms of how I normally approach paintings with sort of colours and such. And I think very, very much to the painting's benefit. I think through every step of this process, I was happy with how each part was looking. There was rarely a moment where I was like, oof, I'm not sure about this, but I'll see how it looks at the end, which can happen with quite a lot of pieces. But as I say, with almost every part of this, I was like, oh, yeah, that works. That looks good. That'll work with the whole piece overall. Browns in his jacket and on his pants. Highlighted the collar just a touch, just to give just a little bit of extra sort of depth to that, just to pull the centre of the piece out from the sort of the slightly more background elements. So pulling Jason's sort of head and neck outwards from his shoulders, just a little bit, using the collar as like a border for that. Some colours on his machete. Which I do put more colour on later on, but even right now I was happy that I didn't just paint it like metallic blue grey colours that I normally would. I used a bit of that, especially in the sort of lighter side that you can see, but sort of turquoises and purples on the other side, which I think look good already, but I feel looks much better later on when I add to it. Just a bunch of turquoise in the background. For now, just to help sort of carve out the shapes that I'm looking at, to help define them in my head as I'm painting them, so I can just get a clearer image of what it is I'm looking at. Oh, that looks like cum! It looks like a reverse bukkake shot spurting out of his face, doesn't it? It's not though. It's going to be blood, kind of. It's going to be bright blood. We'll build up to that. But it very much needed the white underneath, so that when I do paint the blood in, it is nice and bright, shockingly bright is what we were going for. And then on to Psylock. Again with her flesh tones, as you can see on the palette, purples and browns, as well as slightly more peachy basic flesh tones, but not as much as would normally be the case. Again, slightly different to how I normally approach painting skin, but I did want it to, fit in with the piece overall, because Psylock is a very purple character overall. Her clothing and hair and such, there's lots and lots of purples typically when you see her in comics and such. And so that, along with the fact that the piece overall has a lot of purple to it, I wanted her to feel very much a part of that, rather than, like a character slapped on top of a painting. And so I was careful to have some kind of purple tones in her skin, as well as the purples, which will inevitably make it into her clothing and hair and such. I don't know how clear it is on camera, but I did try to put quite a lot of sort of like colour detail into her face. So there are a few pinks and other tones around her cheeks and nostrils and eyebrows and such. Again, it's maybe not clear on camera too much, but it's there. It's there. I really tried with this piece. I mean, not that I don't try with every piece I do, because this is a commission, a bit of an odd commission, Psylock fighting Jason Vorhees, but a very, very cool one. I like the odd commissions. It's always fun to paint something different. It's cool to paint just like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But it's also cool when somebody says, can you paint something like Psylock versus Jason Voorhees? I don't know where I was going with that. Oh yeah, I do. So sometimes I might try a bit less, because sometimes it is just a painting of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and so maybe I approach it as that. It is just the painting of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I still endeavour to make it look cool, look like a good painting, but I rarely sort of feel that I'm experimenting with anything on the page. Whereas with this, with various things in terms of like colours and forms and such, I do feel it might not look experimental, but as I was painting it, it felt like I was experimenting with a couple of things here and there that I wouldn't normally do. So I was trying, I was really putting an extra level of effort into this. And again, being that it was my second try, I really wanted to like get it right, because the first try, I don't know if I finished talking about it, I just fucking hated it. I just wasn't happy with how it looked, the tone or whatever. And so when it came to trying again, I wanted to put the effort in to really make it good, and I think that paid off ultimately. Psylock's clothes, shiny purple outfit, very little detail, basically no detail on her feet and her left hand behind her head, which I feel, because I mentioned it before with regards to painting in detail and outlines and stuff. I'm trying to be careful with over painting things. I don't want to over detail every single part of the piece, because that has been the case with other paintings as well, where I have tried or assumed every part of the painting needs to be as painted as every other part. Every part needs the same attention paid to it, which just isn't necessarily the case depending on what you're painting, of course. So being that she is in motion, I don't feel every part of her needs to be as detailed as every other part. And as said, with regards to like Jason and his collar, I wanted the centre of the painting to be the most detailed and almost like, I don't know, like tilt shifted, like where the focus is completely on the centre, and then the further out from the centre you get, almost the blurrier the painting becomes. Though I didn't necessarily paint it blurry, but I think painting less detail in certain areas gives it that feeling of blur almost. I was happy with Psylock's hair. That was quite good. In the original painting of this I did, which I threw away so you'll never see it, Psylock's hair and her clothes were basically the same colour, because in my head I was like, oh well, they'll just be like dark purple, and I think that's one reason the painting suffered overall. It just looked a bit bland, so I was really happy to have Psylock's outfit look very, very different to her hair, while still being various shades of purple in various tones. And her belt sash thing looks cool. This underglow, initially as I was mixing the paint, I had planned it to be turquoise, just like the turquoise on Jason's hand and the lighting behind them. But I inadvertently painted it. It is turquoise. It looks blue in contrast to the other turquoise. But I ended up happening to make it, to mix it a lot more blue. So as I was painting it, I was a little bit like, oh shit, it's a different colour. But I'm actually really happy with it, because I think it does, again, help to pull Psylock forward within the painting, while, you know, her overall colour scheme still keeping within the tone of the painting overall. So it stops her from blending in too much with Jason behind her, and ultimately I'm glad that the turquoise looks the way it does on her thigh. Some more lighter turquoise for the background. As always, that's one of the funnest parts for me, is just blocking in those colours, because it really does sort of make the characters, make the focus stick out from the background of the piece. So I was happy to do that. This bright pink for the blood. A lot of Psylock art I've seen, I guess, I don't know anything about her, my apologies. I guess she has some kind of glowing pink energy power or something, I don't know, but I've seen the glowing pink on a lot of art of her. So I wanted to incorporate that into the piece, but I didn't feel it necessary to like have her glowing pink in any way. So I thought it would be cool to make this blood spurt out of Jason's face bright pink. So I still have that pink element within a painting featuring Psylock, but it's not directly coming from Psylock, though it is a result of Psylock's actions, so I'm happy with that as well. Also, that pink it's like a super, like the pinkest pink from Culture Hustle, I think, where that uses like ridiculously concentrated pink pigment. Like it looks bright on camera, but no photography can do it justice in terms of how pink it is. Like if you look at the painting IRL, that pink fucking glows, like it jumps off of the painting, which I was really, really happy with. It's always good to have an excuse to use that because I have that paint, but it's rare that I get a chance to use it in such a way that it really emphasises just how pink it is. So I thought that was a good excuse to use it here in this piece. Very centrally, in a burst of liquid, blood shooting out of someone's face. I think it's a really, really good use of it. Good on me. Go me. Brilliant for me. Aren't I smart to do such a thing? Getting the outlines in, some details on Jason's mask. As previously noted, I'm really trying to pay attention to how much outlining I do and where I do and don't use them. Around about halfway through getting this hand done, I was a bit worried that I had put too much outlining and detail on it, and I thought maybe I overcrowded that turquoise glow that I really liked when I first got it painted. But I think overall it's okay. I didn't overdo it, and also you might be able to see I mixed a very, very dark green specifically to outline that hand, rather than using the dark red, almost black that I used to outline everything else. And so there is that green tone in the outline of that hand, which does help with keeping it where it is, and not distracting from its colouring and its glow too much. And you may note towards the end or around here, Psylock's feet, as I said, and that hand that's behind her, I leave those basically as they are now, with no real detail on them, which was a conscious choice at around this point. I almost felt the urge to like paint in the tendons in her wrist and the curvature of her palm and her thumb, with a little bit of shadow underneath the hand, just on the handle of the sword, just to like imply detail and shadow. But I did stop myself almost physically from doing that, and I'm really glad I did. I think it does help bring the front of the painting forward, have the back of the painting back, and also again she is in motion, so it almost seems silly to have that much detail on those parts of her. I was happy with the sword, with where it curves naturally because it's a katana and it has that curve to it, but then exaggerating that curve at the top with the super white highlight and that little swoosh line, just enhancing the motion of her slashing Jason's stupid face open. And that's the paint the thing all done. As I said, this was the second version of this painting, and I'm incredibly happy with how it came out. Anytime I do a painting, sometimes whilst I'm working on a painting, sometimes when I finish, I will take a picture and then flip that, invert it horizontally, because it gives you a better idea of like how other people might see it, because you're sort of almost seeing it freshly. It does weird things if you flip pieces. You see different things in different ways, and sometimes like a poorly drawn or painted foot or face or something will jump out at me when I do that. But sometimes I'll look at a piece inverted or flipped and I'll think, oh shit, that looks really cool. And this one was an instance where I flipped it and I went, oh shit, that looks really cool. Overall really, really happy with how this piece turned out. I hope you enjoyed seeing it get made. I don't have an erection anymore. I like talking about paintings, but evidently not that much. I just thought you'd like to know, just so we can close off that little part of the narrative.